Hi there, this is H. Victoria Hargro Atkerson. I'm an author and a writer, and I'm here to talk to you about writing. And we talk about writing readiness. A lot of people say, I don't know what to write about. And that's legitimate, but I tell you, think about something you really love to do. Now, I think one of the things that will help you focus in on how you do this is to choose a subject matter you want to write about. And I'll just use one of my books as an example of that and then talk about some of the things that are included in that book. And I think you'll get the idea. Okay, now, this was a book I did not want to write because this Buttermilk Bottom, because I had no idea there was a story there. But a good friend of mine, my adopted brother Larry Wright, read this book and he saw two characters in this book that he absolutely loved. And he worried me for months, unceasingly for months, to tell me to write something. And you have to write something about these characters. And I was like, there's nothing there. It's just two minor characters. They're barely mentioned in this book. But he was fascinated about this place. And the place, I never thought about writing anything about it because this was a place out of my childhood. I passed by this neighborhood every day going back and forth to C.W. Hill Elementary School in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was a place I went to frequently. My friends lived there. And it was a great place because the place was loaded with children. I mean, if you want to know the latest Your Mama jokes or the latest games, the latest anything, you would go there and people, they were just kids all the time. It was like herds of children running all over the place. Buttermilk Bottom was one of the first places blacks moved into after the Civil War because it was so restrictive after slavery. They had to move into places like this, substandard housings, little or no city services. Like some places didn't have indoor bathrooms, some had latrines, some had outhouses. And it was just basically a wooden frame building, similar to a little bit more sophisticated than a slave cabin, but in a lot of ways it was not because the conditions there were very poor because it was rat infested and all of that. So, getting back to my original thought, I never thought about writing this book, but due to the pressure and the nagging of my adopted brother, I sat down and started writing it. So once I decided I was going to write something about these two characters, which was a number writer and what do you call it, a voodoo priestess. Sorry, I couldn't get that out. I started thinking about what aspects of that neighborhood I remember, and I wrote everything down. Just wrote everything down, nothing formal, just Buttermilk Bottom and what I thought about it, how I interacted with the people there, who I knew there, what the place looked like, what were the houses like, the people like, what was the feeling I got walking those mud roads because they were muddy because of the water that drained in from all the streets above it, because this community sat in a gigantic ditch, and it was called the bottom because you had to go down a hill several feet into almost 75 feet into the ground in order to get to the actual housings. But most of the houses on this in the bottom were even with your hip line if you were on a adjacent street. So, and the streets were always wet because the water always seeped in from the streets above. So they call it the bottom because actually it was. Um, so that's an example of how you get started on a story. You can get the impetus to write anything, anytime, anywhere. But because I was nagged to death, I wrote this book. And it turned out to be a very good one, but it's the one I did not even think of writing. I had no intentions of writing anything about Buttermilk Bottom. I barely remembered it out of childhood, but it was a big part of my life and a big part of our black history, which I never thought about until I started writing this book, because it's were absolutely substandard housing that people were expected to live in and exist in. So take a look at your resources, your memories. Take a look at people, colorful people in your life. And one of the things, maybe I'll get into some of the characters in this book a little bit because they were very colorful. And some of the things that were happening down there was very interesting. It was legendary, okay? So it was great. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Now, before you go, be sure to like this program, touch that sign that goes up, and then subscribe. There's a red button right over here. Just hit the button to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. You won't receive anything in the mail. All it is a way of you knowing when I post a video. And as soon as I post it, you will be notified of that. They even have a little bell there if you want to know right away. Otherwise, they'll notify you just with flashing and whatever. Okay, and pretty soon I will be going out on the road doing book fairs and book festivals, so be sure to look me up. I'll be selling this book. This is Enslaved. That's my latest one. It came out in February, so make sure you get a copy so we have something to talk about when I see you. I'll see you at the book fairs and the book festivals. I will be out. So love to you. Love someone special. And take care. God bless.